The President and Prime Minister of Finland have announced that the country should apply to join the NATO military alliance without delay. The Finnish government is likely to formally apply for membership after receiving parliamentary approval next week. Finland shares a 1,300-kilometre border with Russia, and public support for joining NATO surged after the invasion of Ukraine. Finland's neighbour to the west, Sweden, is also expected to announce its intentions to join NATO over the weekend. The accession process is expected to be shorter than previous applications from other countries. The 30-nation alliance will grant observer status to Finland and Sweden for the interim period, but the formal ratification can take anywhere between 4 months to a year. Our correspondent Rosie Burchard is joining me live now from Brussels, where NATO is headquartered. And Rosie, explain what happens next.
Well, what happens next, Ollie, is a major shift in the European security landscape. Let's just take a look back. NATO was born in the aftermath of World War II. It had a mission to provide collective security for Western Europe and North America against the Soviet Union. But in all that time, all those decades in between, Finland has always kept its distance. It was happy to be a partner, but not a member, and it's been keeping up business-like cooperation with its neighbour Moscow. But the invasion of Ukraine has really changed all of that. As you rightly said, public support for NATO membership has surged, and now the country's leaders are expressing their intention to join. This is not the final step. It paves the way for that accession and reverses decades of military non-alignment. Finland is expected to submit a formal application in the coming days, and Sweden will likely follow suit. They're expected to submit those applications together. This is something which Moscow will certainly not be happy about.
And Rosie, when we talk about reaction, where I am, for example, in Latvia, we've just heard from the Latvian Prime Minister, Kristanis Kariņš. He says he sincerely welcomes the announcement regarding Finland's application for NATO membership. He calls it an important turn towards an even stronger alliance and greater security, he says, in the Baltic Sea region. What about NATO and what about Russia? What are we hearing from them?
Well, quite different reactions there from NATO and Russia. As you pointed out, we've had some NATO leaders coming in with clear expressions of support. Another one is the Estonian Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas. She says her country will do everything to move this forward without delay. Both countries, Sweden and Finland, if they want to join, will need formal backing from all NATO allies, but no opposition is expected. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has in the past even said that the alliance is expected to welcome Finland and Sweden with open arms. Russia, on the other hand, says NATO is a threat to its security, and it says this move from Finland's leaders is also a threat. It says that joining NATO will not improve security for Finland. And more broadly, Moscow has in the past threatened to deploy extra nuclear weapons and more military assets in the Baltic Sea region. It says to rebalance the situation if Finland joins. But once Finland is part of NATO, if indeed it does proceed with the application as is very much expected, it will be party to Article 5. That's the collective defence pledge taken by all NATO allies, which says an attack on one is an attack on all. And that means it can count on support from big military powers like the United States. Now, while there are concerns that perhaps in this interim period between application and formal accession, Finland could be subject to some retaliation from Moscow, perhaps in the form of cyber attacks, certainly what I'm hearing from diplomats here is that they believe there's no real imminent military threat to Finland, not least because Russia very much has its hands tied in Ukraine, where that war rages on.